just gotta get into it, I guess, right?
Let's just do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So do you want to sort of give a opening about what we're doing with this fireside chat kind of
The concept in general?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the concept in general is that there's lots of stuff we want to talk about, and we think that this format for just sitting here and ultimately answering a lot of questions or digging into a lot of different topics, whether it's with you or whether it's with members of our team or ultimately clients and other people who we find fascinating or we think could provide useful information for founders and other folks associated with building hopefully great companies. I think this format hopefully will resonate with a lot of people, and we're just going to see how it evolves, just like everything else. So I'm excited about it.
So today we're talking about EOS.
Yep.
And sort of just doing an overview. This will be the first episode in a series about EOS.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I guess starting at the bottom, at the base of everything, I guess what is a BOS?
Yeah. So a BOS, the acronym is Business Operating System, and it's an interesting, there's so many different ways you could describe an operating system. You could describe, a company operating system or an entrepreneurial operating system or a business operating system or, lots of different ways of describing it. But the basic concept is that every single company, really all of us, we run on an operating system. And the question is it intentional? Is it accidental? How sophisticated is it? And it's particularly important when you have a bunch of people working together, because we got to sort of figure out how to work really, really well together, enjoy what we're doing, not step on each other's toes, be on the same page. And what's happened is, we've been building companies, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of years, but we've really been focusing on the art and science probably for the last 100+ years. And the art and science has evolved to the point where we have these things called business operating systems. And a business operating system is a collection of concepts and tools and disciplines that helps us all work really, really well together, right? Take an idea, test it. If it's a good idea, maybe we start to produce it, whether it's a product or a service. And all of a sudden you bring other people in to help you turn this idea into something that can scale and something that lots of people will benefit from. And so, what we've discovered is, or what we think is, there's actually 5 levels of operating systems or business operating systems. There's the accidental one, when everybody just gets together and like, we got this idea for building a company. Let's go get to work on it. And the first thing you do is you try to prove product market fit. Maybe you get your arms around some strategy or some a vision or a position or all these different things, and then everybody sort of runs around, tries to figure out if it's going to work or not. While you're running around, you're thinking about things, you're documenting things, you're getting agreements. And in the beginning, a lot of times it's just haphazard, and people are using, like, maybe you're using Google Docs and I'm using Word Docs, and maybe someone's using Excel for a CRM, and someone else has actually said, hey, I'm going to use some form of a cloud-based CRM, but everybody's kind of just running around doing their own thing. That's accidental. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, let's all get on the same page. Let's use maybe Google Drive to store all of our folders. Let's use these particular types of tools, an Excel file or a Google Sheets or whatever it is. And you go from accidental to intentional, and that's sort of the second level of an operating system. The third level is, you're like, hey, we're not the first ones to ever build a company. And so this feels like it could be easier. What we're all about is creating value for customers and prospective customers, and we shouldn't be wasting a lot of our time building the operating system. So there's got to be a better way of doing this. And so that next level is called a designed operating system. And there are a lot of designed operating systems out there. Probably one of the first of them was eMyth, Michael Gerber's eMyth, and then over time, a number of them have come to being. We're obviously talking about EOS today, and I think EOS. If I remember this correctly, Gino wrote Traction, the book, in in 1998, or is it 2008? 2008, and so that's a famous operating system, which we're going to talk about today. But there are other operating systems like Scaling Up, and there's other systems like Pinnacle and Empire, and so there's a number of them out there. But we're going to talk about EOS today. So that's the designed operating system. The interesting thing about the designed operating systems is some of them have like almost all the core concepts and tools and disciplines that you need to, in my opinion, build a company, something that you can, a company versus a business. A business is something that, if your founder dies or just stops running it, it goes away. Whereas a company is something you can actually pass on either to a new leader or you can sell it. So if you want to build a company, right, you focus on a certain number of different things. And most of the designed operating systems, in my opinion, there's just a couple things that they don't have in there that I think are core to building a great company. When they have all the core concept, tools, and disciplines, I call that a holistic operating system. And then the penultimate is, what we're doing, right, which is it's all the best practices associated with these BOSs, right, all the concepts, tools, and disciplines, and we're putting it into the cloud. And so that everybody can work on the same things regardless of where they are, what time of day it is, where they are across the world. And so, so that's the penultimate version. We called it an integrated cloud-based platform or operating system. And that's what 5 minutes on an operating system.
The big thing is with all these things is they're pulling from elements that are sort of like proven methodologies and time tested theories and practices.
Yeah.
And so, right, that all gets back to making sure that the goal of everything being explicit, coherent, and resonant.
Yeah. So if building a company is very similar to building a house, right? And so there's just certain concepts, tools, and disciplines that you need. Like you need to have meetings to make sure everybody's on the same page. You need to have a sense for where you're going, all that, a vision, right? You need to have goals. How are we going to evolve the company so that we can continue to be competitive and or even better ahead of the marketplace, right? You need to figure out how you're going to deal with data. So there's all these sort of concepts, tools, and disciplines that are associated with an operating system. And ultimately, what you want to do is, like you just said, what we talk a lot about is when you get the concepts put together, like an ideal client, as an example, is a concept. Your core values is a concept. Your value proposition, or what we call your unique value proposition, or what EOS calls like your 3 uniques, that's a concept. And ultimately what you want to do is have these things that are really important, like a hammer is really important if you're building a house, like a level is really important if you're building a house. All these things that are really important, whether it's a concept, tool, or discipline, you want to make sure that it's explicit, like everybody in the company's on the same page. Then what you want to make sure is that collectively it's all coherent. So what do I mean by that? So if one of your core values is team, but you're paying everybody to run and just like be exceptional at getting new business, and it doesn't matter whether or not you step on one of your colleagues' toes to go get a customer. Like, let's just say there's no structure whatsoever and everybody's running around calling on the same people. That's kind of uncool. It's a waste of time, right? But that's what you've incentivized. So coherent means don't have core values that say team and have incentives that say warrior, as an example. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess that comes back to accountability, right? And focus on that.
And alignment and things like that. And then ultimately, if you really want to do this well, you want all those concepts, tools, and disciplines to resonate. And you want them to resonate not just with your own people, but you want them to resonate with your ideal stakeholders. And that's a big idea, actually. So ideal stakeholders, every company has stakeholders. Obviously, employees are stakeholders, and their customers are stakeholders. There's always money invested, and so those investors are stakeholders. Almost every company has vendors, and those are stakeholders. And then ultimately you may have strategic partners, and those are stakeholders. And then you you exist within a community. Some companies exist within just a local community. Some companies, maybe it's regional. Some companies it's national. We're obviously international, right? We're in 40 different countries. So, our community is the world, particularly the free world. And so ultimately what you want to do is you want to have high trust relationships with all of those ideal stakeholders. And you want to be clear on who your ideal stakeholders are, because if you're just like anybody, you may sit here in your employees, as an example, if you're not clear on ideal stakeholders, they may feel like, well, every single customer, we gotta really try hard to make them happy. But some customers you can't make happy, and so don't waste your energy on those customers. That's why it's important to really be clear about who your ideal customer is, and then lean into having a high trust relationship with them. But don't waste your energy on someone who's not buying what you're selling, or who, frankly, you just think is not a good customer to have a relationship with because they treat your people poorly. So, back to, there are certain concepts, tools, and disciplines. We want this as explicit as possible, coherent and resonant, and then ultimately this helps us build really, like I say, high trust relationships with all of the people that really matter to us.
Yeah, and I guess going off of people, right, one of the things that's sort of an important component in all this is like the power of coaches and leveraging that community and sort of building from there.
Yeah, because there's an old expression, you can't read the label from inside a jar, right? And so what that means is that it's hard to be objective about yourself. And so, I encourage everyone who can afford it, and in particular founders, and even senior leaders in companies that can afford it, right? There's something very powerful about having a third party help you see yourself and help you see how you're working as a team, as an example. And those are coaches, right? And so we deeply believe if you really want to build a great company, having a third party who's really objective, who helps you think about not just how you guys are working, but walk you through the journey associated with building a great company. Because one of the things we teach is that there are 5 stages of development to go from a business, right? Something where if you die or you stop wanting to run it, it goes away, to a true company that you can hand off to someone, as I said earlier, to either run it or you can sell it to someone. So there's those 5 stages, and as you're going through those stages, it's a lot of work. And all the tools are relatively simple, but that journey is not so simple. And so having a coach help you navigate that journey is something we deeply believe is a very smart thing to do if you can afford it. And we think it's worth investing in. So we encourage everybody to coach.
Building off that entrepreneurial community,
right?
EOS eyes as coaches, how does that sort of kick off, I guess, our discussion more specifically about EOS?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things I'm hugely have a huge amount of respect for what Gino did, right? I mean, one of the things he did was that was brilliant was he took all these concepts and tools and disciplines, put it into a book that was really, really well written from the perspective of a couple of different things. Number one, the flow is really good. It sort of has a nice stacking of bringing you into the big ideas. Number two, he really simplified it as much as you could simplify it. There's an old expression I love, which is less is more until it's not. So you make things as simple as you possibly can, and right, there's a number of people who are great quotes around this, but he did an amazing job of making it as simple as you possibly can without making it so simple it doesn't work anymore, right? And so that's one of the beauties of traction. The next thing he did that was really, really good was he just didn't write the book. He went out and built a coaching community because, as I said earlier, it's hard, right? The journey from stage 1 to stage 5 takes time. It's people, we're messy, we're complex, and the challenges that we encounter along that journey they're not predictable. You can't predict what challenges you'll have building a company. We know that obviously really, really well. And so so the coaches are really good. That was one of the things he did that I think amazing is he not only wrote a great book, but he built a community. And when he leaned into building the community, one of the things he really leaned into was this concept of purity. And I don't love the word, but I love the intent, right? And the intent was, let's really get good as a community at teaching the same thing, so that there's power into all of the community that you're creating, not just the coaching community, but the community of companies that are running on EOS. There's shared language. They're all talking the same things. They're experiencing a lot of the same things because of the journey they take, the way they take the journey, the way you sort of stage the journey, and so that those shared frameworks provide in essence, a compounding effect, right? So Einstein said the eighth wonder of the world is compounding, and so what that basically means is, if you do the same thing over and over and over, the amount of benefit you get compounds. Whether you're talking about compounding money and interest rates, you're compounding knowledge, you're compounding experience. And so the community is one of the things that is super powerful about EOS.
Yeah, and it's the same thing to be said about relationships, right? Compounding the network effect, basically. That's another way of looking at that.
Yeah.
So on EOS, what do you believe is like the core pain point behind why somebody would, adopt EOS as a process, as a system?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, the journey is complex. Even though there's only 20 concepts, tools, and disciplines that are really super core for mastery in terms of being really good at the art and science of company building, the whole thing involves people, right? And we're complex, and every single human is extraordinarily unique. I could spend a lot of time talking about this, as you well know, but we've got aptitudes, we've got experiences, and we have personalities, and we have skills, and we have interests, and we have garbage that somehow or another, starts to accumulate as we develop as human beings. We have biases. I mean, I can go on, right? And when you look at every single human, we're extraordinarily unique, as I shared. And so, figuring out how to create an organization where, we get everybody to be pretty focused. This is what I'm doing, and this is how I help. And then we align around things like, our goals and our vision, our core values, and our ideal customers. Right? That's not easy. And so ultimately, what we want people to do is we want them to thrive, and we want their companies to thrive. And so that journey, is all about the coaches really help you sort of navigate the complexity associated with the journey to mastery. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And on that journey, right? Because you have a lot of companies, starting off small and then growing with EOS.
Right.
And so, big part of it is the scalability. And so, on the philosophical side, what makes EOS scalable?
As I mentioned earlier, it's really simple, right? He made everything as simple as possible. And so if you think about scaling, it is hard, it's complex. And so what you want to be able to do is make everything as simple as possible, number one. Number two, the journey that the coaches will take you through, or you can take on your own by reading the books, it's time tested, and so it helps you think about prioritizing the mastery of being a great company builder, right? You can't all of a sudden just click your snap your fingers and you're great at everything. So, as an example, one of the tools EOS has is the accountability chart, which, most people think is an org chart. Theirs is focused on accountability, not on titles. And so they like to call it the accountability chart. And I like that aspect I like that term. And so, I like to say that all tools are equal, to paraphrase Orwell, right? All tools are equal, but some tools are more equal than others. I think you need to get that accountability chart, that org chart needs to be like one of the first things you focus on, right? And you can't focus on everything, and so you just have to sort of what's first, what's second, what's third. And, so first thing for me personally is I think you got to be thinking about that and working on that, because that involves all the people. How are we going to divide and conquer, right? What are the skills and experiences we need? And so, structure first, people second. It's a famous line that we all use. So you got that part of the journey and mastery. And then my experience has been, and I've had, 60, 70 clients, and then obviously building 90, and I've built a couple other businesses too. My experience is that the last thing you really want to focus on mastering, and let's just say that's a 9 out of 10, that you collectively as a senior leadership team score yourself, it's process, right? Because every department's at a different phase. They've got different things they got to focus on. And you'd think you'd like to get process refined real early on, but it's just hard. So, helping people think through how to prioritize getting strong across what EOS calls the 6 key components, right? And so there is a journey there. There is some time-tested best practices in terms of, what's your first step, what's your second step, what's your third step, et cetera.
What are those 6 key components for those who don't know?
Yeah. So the first one's vision, which, is on the top, even though I said, accountability chart should be first. But, vision's first, and then people as the second core component, key component. And then the third one is data. And then the fourth one it has is issues, because it has a wheel. So that's how I always think about it, right? And the fifth one is process, and the sixth one is traction. And each of those core components has 2 concepts and or disciplines associated with it, right? And so, the vision has about 8 things you want to get everybody on the same page. People, right seat. Data is scorecards, and everyone ultimately has. EOS teaches a number, but I deeply believe you need to have at least 3 KPIs per every single individual, or metrics or measurables, as they say. Then it teaches you how to be really good at issue solving, because every company has issues. I mentioned process. And then that traction is, right, what are the things you need to turn the vision into reality? I forget who it is off the top of my head, but vision, the old expression about vision without traction is hallucination, kind of a thing.
Yeah, vision without execution is hallucination.
Yeah.
It was Edison or something. But yeah, I guess that's probably our last point, but we kind of touched on it, but didn't really go into depth, sort of focusing on and appreciating people, right? And a big part of, it's a big part of EOS.
Yeah.
And especially, having your visionaries and your integrators, and sort of the dynamic, the yin yang kind of dynamic that goes along with that.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, one of the reasons why building a great company isn't easy, it's because people are complex, right? On the one hand. On the other hand, it's just like archetypes, right? They provide utility. They help us generally understand people. And, one of the things I deeply believe is that, part of the journey of life is to become better and better and better at self and others awareness. And so you got this concept of self and others awareness, and then you got the concept of archetypes as an example. And so, one of the things that you can see is that there are a lot of founders out there that are, they're sort of like your classic entrepreneur, right? Where they have tons of thoughts. They're brilliant. They're highly, they're amazing storytellers. They can, I used to say about one of my old bosses, he could sell waters to someone who's drowning, right? So they're amazingly compelling, magnetic beings. A lot of those people, those visionaries who have these compelling ideas, we're going to go from here to there. They're great leaders. People want to follow them. They're not as good at sort of the day-to-day management. They're not as good at making sure the trains are running on time. They're not as good at really seeing where someone is in a moment and helping them. They're not as good at sort of focusing on developing people. They're good, but they're not great, right? And so half the time in small and mid-sized businesses, what you find is, or what we've experienced, is that you have these dynamic duos where you got the visionary who's like, this is where we're going to go. This is what's amazing about it. This is the dream. I'm great at selling this to all of our ideal stakeholders, right? I can sell my customers, I can sell employees. They're amazing at that stuff, but they're not amazing, as I said earlier, at managing and coaching and really making sure things are running relatively smoothly. So when you have that type of entrepreneur, and most are, right? It's powerful when you sort of help them find a yin to their yang, right? And those I call those dynamic duos because together they're super powerful. Now the reality is it's easier said than done because we're humans, and and you need to develop trust. You need to feel like the puzzle piece that you are and they are matches up well. And there's a lot into visionaries versus integrators. And EOS has a whole thing on to support visionaries and another whole thing to support integrators. But that's just like the beginning of the people stuff for EOS. So they focus on really helping visionaries figure out whether they need integrators. They help visionaries think about what a really good integrator would look like for me. But then what it also does, though, is it cascades down the focus on people, right? One of the things that it's really good at doing is encouraging everybody to have quarterly conversations as opposed to just annual reviews. As anybody who's hung with me for a while knows, I really hate annual reviews. I think they're ridiculous. You're going to wait a year to tell someone how they're doing. If you do that, you're not going to remember anything except for the last 3, 4, 5 weeks. So that's uncool. And so, that's an example of EOS being really good at helping people sort of have good feedback systems, good practices around helping people, coaching and developing people. But there's a whole host of things that EOS does well on the people front. Weekly meetings, as an example, right? Making sure everybody's reasonably well connected, and focusing on just staying in touch. Obviously, helping teams come together and focus over 90-day periods is another thing that's really important. And obviously, teams are nothing but a collection of people. So there's a bunch of things, and we could obviously go down a lot of rabbit holes on this one, but there's a bunch of things I think EOS does particularly well with regard to helping us sort of master the people component. Yeah.
Well, I guess all we have time for today. It's been fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our first time.
First one.
All righty.
All right.
Thanks.